It's gathering up in Tacoma to be an unseasonal scorcher. So I want to get off to an early start on this video because I'm going to have the fans on all day. Um, Only occasionally does something present itself as helpful in explaining something I really try not to talk about, which is Midori Goto's role in the way that I was brutally tortured by Peter Gabriel and Yoko Ono and a bunch of their friends. Joe Biden recently came out talking about pining and pining away about Hollywood writers who are on strike, because they bring us the stories of our lives, he said. In other words, he doesn't share my concern that Hollywood has been telling a false frame of stories. Now, I'll read you a little of what is real from a letter I wrote to the Human Rights Commission. My name is Matt Crary. I'm a 62-year-old deaf man with Parkinson's living in Tacoma, Washington in Section 8 housing. Alone, but I have studied and researched. I have a college diploma. I grew up in a section of Pittsburgh called Squirrel Hill where many Jewish Holocaust survivors lived. Occasionally I saw the tattoos. Their children horrifically battered me, calling me a nice blonde boy, and wrote evil letters calling our neighborhood Squirrel Hill, Squrl, taking out the letters IRE, and jeering me as a goy. My grandfather, Ward Moore, was loud and proud of being Irish. He could wiggle his ears. He was a copy editor in St. Louis and married to my grandmother 66 years. Stop a second. There's something particularly venomous about the way that they targeted the grandchild of distinguished citizens of Poplar Bluff, Missouri. Throughout my life, the British have brutalized and tormented me. An Israeli psychiatrist named Bernard Wattenmaker, who worked at Attica State Prison, was my neighbor. My father, Ryland, abandoned us, but otherwise tried to be a good person. He was on the same ship as Bush in the Navy, but wrote his first book on human rights while at Teachers College with Eisenhower. A regional director of Amnesty International called him a hero. He would share a philosophy of education at the university. Wattenmaker organized a gang of violent car thieves to kidnap and gas me in a place called King's Estate, subjecting me to sexually abominable humiliation and slaughtering head blows, putting me on inhalants while on a shocking nerve agent. They did this for Peter Sinfield and Yoko Ono, who later masqueraded as Amnesty International, from which office they called me a one-man Northern Ireland, threatened me with AIDS, used scabies on me, and left me chemically castrated, refusing with the complicity of sound mental health to allow me to attend school for 12 years. When I escaped and graduated in honors, they welcomed me back by poisoning me in the mouth. The official explanation given by Peter Gabriel was experience park. Now, just as we have to live by our stories, so what did they do? Was they spliced his favorites, the Jews, spliced in to the story that abominable, and got some out of control foreign women to seduce me. Now he wants to tell the story his way. You know, it's a Blacko story. In fact, when I told some of this story to a detective for the Seattle police many years ago, he was very angry at the King family for going along with this. Well, Midori Goto was considered a hot property. Contrary to the myths that the criminals responsible for this play put on about me, did want to have children. And it's false to say that I didn't. Now, there's a book called Trinity. I was told that I was disallowed to have children by this cult. And the book called Trinity was recommended to me by one of the people in this cult, an attorney for the Federal Emergency Management Agency. It has a scene where a man, his girlfriend is killed or something. He chains himself to the wall and screams and screams. It's the idea of losing something. So, one of the kids who worked me over was named Saul Brecker, which is like soul breaker. And they implanted a nerve agent that made me deaf to intensify the suffering of being rejected so that they could mock me. This is the story that Joe embellishes as a sadistic story about West Coast domination by the black man. Another one of his favorites. Now, there's also a movie called Sancho the Bailiff, which is a long and grueling Japanese movie. Midori Goto put me through a long and grueling homeless ordeal while she was carrying on about her fabled rejection of the petitioner who had tried to warn people about the gang behind AIDS and COVID. They used the symbol of a foot. Ichiro lured me to Seattle, and I spent 10 years doubled over in pain and loneliness while they abused me in Seattle. Really, really, really ferociously abused me. They used the foot for, because Ian Watmaker was into foot and mouth disease. It was his favorite medical phenomenon. So they used the foot for the symbol of kicking people out, poisoning me in the mouth. And that's the truth of what they what they've done. So what they did was they replayed rejection over and over again. I mean, if you want to know what really motivated me to investigate Mount Desert Island, it was the fact that my peers were at risk. I mean, you cannot tell the people in West Coast anything. They start going into chewing carpets to shreds whenever somebody says that you have the right to your hard-earned labor. They go around breaking with people who are small shopkeepers who work hard, get their windows broken, the doors kicked down by these disgruntled who have no concept of somebody else's hard work. No concept of it. They go around and Joe Biden goes over to him and says, psst, psst. He's the white who could have saved John Lennon. Doing real good for Barack. Barack wants you to. And this is this counter story that he's telling, and he holds fast to Hollywood's storyline. The West was an anti-army who could have saved John Lennon, and he beats the drum on that over and over.